Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Refracted Curvature, Neil, Brian's Logic, Eli, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Greetings.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good to have you all. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
You're going to need R for that, Nathan. They ain't got it.
You're going to need a flat plane for that R, as the R is based on elevation angles to Polaris.
No, there is no geometric edge predicted by any math derived from a radius. No.
Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle from a curved adjacent?
Nope.
No one's even tried to say that that was the case.
Well,
Not
they
that
have.
I'm aware.
Sorry, Eliza.
I mean, not that I'm aware of, like, prior to us talking about it, I don't think anyone's even tried to express that you could.
Well, Brian said it best. They need a right angle to Polaris.
Well, what they've done is they tried to ignore the surface of this Earth altogether and say, no one ever said we needed to do measurements on the surface. That's what they've been saying.
Can I follow up with what I just posted a screenshot of? So
You posted it,
says-
Master B?
Yeah.
I'll just go and bring it up. Yeah, go ahead.
So they're talking about the what do you call it? Portal land charts. And what I've cited here is they say questions of latitude, longitude, compass variation, and the curvature of the Earth's surface could be safely ignored.
Happy days. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No, because the MiG would crash.
It would have to be on a flat plane if it would actually happen.
So Brian summarised in the pre-show about how a MiG would end up crashing into the ground because of its lack of lift versus a curved Earth falling away from its position as it travels at absolutely huge speeds. So, if you remember, check that out on the pre-show. We might get into it in the live show again, we'll see. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that all airplanes would eventually crash into the ground. There'd be no way around it. They just would take a bit longer, I would think. But all airplanes, I mean, if they were flying around the globe, well, not exactly, no. They'd have to fly at a specific rate if they were flying at a specific altitude to match the curvature. But they'd all have to dip below horizontal. But anyway, they'd all have to be taken account for a rotating Earth underneath them, which they're not.
Gave 99% of it. They don't dip below horizontal, they stay above horizontal to maintain the lift that they need. That's only possible on a flat plane. There you go. That's all of it.
Yep.
Hello.
Hey, Arwin.
Hey, Arwin.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
You're going to need a flat Earth for that.
Nobody talks about that one anymore.
Yeah, but you're going to need a flat Earth for that. You need elevation angles to Polaris to create a globe for us.
True that. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Not without a flat Earth.
Well, Bob still actually had this message. I don't know if you picked up on that. Bob Nodell. He was convinced that in a vacuum chamber, if you release helium or hydrogen, that if you just let it settle, it will eventually, through, what is it, electrostatics or something, form a slight layer at the bottom, kind of like a pool.
You sure? I vaguely remember somebody posting something in Skype about that. And what I read was a description, allegedly from Bob Nodell, of a container within a container, i.e. a helium balloon inside a vacuum. Am I wrong in what I read?
Yeah, he said if you bust the balloon, that the helium will eventually then kind of sit around at the bottom.
Exactly.
Oh, well, that's incorrect.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, well, do you want to actually verbalise it, why it's incorrect?
Yeah, because gas expands in all directions. So as soon as that balloon busts, which it will under enough low pressure, that helium will fill the chamber. The only reason you will have any difference in pressure from the top to the bottom will be due to temperature.
So what are you going to do? Sit around at the bottom and play cards? Have tea?
Hold on.
Have coffee?
Hold on. The description includes a process of popping a balloon, right? Well, as demonstrated by the fact that it didn't do that in the containment of the balloon. It filled the balloon equally in all directions. That's what the gas did when it was in the containment of the balloon. And if that balloon was in a vacuum and you removed the balloon as the container, the vacuum chamber replaces it as the container, and it will do the exact same thing, the gas that is, which is to say it would fill the container the same way it filled the balloon.
Worse again, why does the balloon pop? Because the pressures get so low that the internal pressure of the balloon is way higher than the external pressure of the vacuum chamber. And the balloon pops because the helium inside the balloon, or whatever gas is inside the balloon, wants to fill the available volume. It's mad for it, literally.
Okay, well, let's just summarise this with the actual question that's associated. So, any evidence that you can have gas pressure at all without the necessary antecedent of a container?
No.
Nope. We can't even make a vacuum without a container.
Okay, what about any...
Yes.
Containment is necessary for any type of pressure.
Okay, as just slightly out of order, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
Only DVs.
Yeah, well, if you're a heliocentrist, you'll need a flat plane to create a globe model.
The answer would be no, Nathan. There isn't. They can't create a viable hypothesis because they can't manipulate their IVs.
But any phenomenon they observe will be within the structure of a globe model if they're a heliocentrist.
Oh, well, they'll need a flat plane for that.
Yeah, but I mean, they'll still observe it. Whether they believe they're on a flat plane or a globe, they still observe the same light in the sky. It's what they decide that it is, and everything else is the problem.
The light itself wouldn't be the phenomenon. Something happening would have to be the phenomenon, and everything that happens within a globe model for them.
Well, they do make assertions about what the lights are and what they're made of and everything else and how they got there. So the light itself is a phenomenon.
No,
Is
that's
a
wrong.
natural
Hold
phenomenon.
on. You've just whistled past him by giving a bad example. What it is and what it does is not the same as something actually occurring. So if you qualify the phenomena of the star appearing in the night sky, then you can call it a phenomena. Something's happened, right? No star, then there's a star. So the star's appearance is the phenomena. But then if you're going to science that, you're studying the cause of the star's appearance because that's the natural phenomena you're studying. Well, I think what's being described is the what's and the is of a heliocentric world when looking at and describing lights in the sky. Now, on occasion, they might do something, and that thing that they do is the phenomena, but there'll never be an opportunity for somebody to say, I can establish proactively the cause of the effect that's already happened. Because that would mean that
Well,
in terms of what the stars have got to do for it to be scientifically valid, is then assume the cause of what they witnessed and then vary it and make it happen again. Chances of that happening, zero.
What is the cause of them saying the stars appearing in the night sky? What do they assert as the cause?
Well, that would mean that they had a viable hypothesis. That would be an answer to my question, wouldn't it? Any viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics could be answered by the naturally occurring phenomena of the appearance of the stars is presumed to be caused by X, and varied, when varied, caused Y, which was the phenomena of the stars appearing. But that's never going to happen, is it?
Their cause is Earth turn.
That's correct.
And that's what I'm saying. It'll have to be within a heliocentric description.
Well, then it can't be scientifically validated if they're claiming Earth turn as the cause of the star's appearance, because that would mean that you had to vary that which you assumed caused the effect, which would be the assumption of a spherical Earth moving. No, neither of those two statements are true in the first instance, let alone a causal thing that you can vary.
So yeah, but they don't have a phenomenon, is what it comes down to. They don't even have that.
Well, they have the existence of the star as a phenomenon. So they could claim, which they do, claim a cause for how the star came into existence, which they do.
The existence of Shu as a phenomenon is what we're getting at?
We know the existence of Shu, that's man-made, whereas the star is not man-made.
No, that's a what is question. It's not a how or why.
Yeah, but they do state a cause to the existence of it within their model.
Again, not scientifically validated. They've just come up with a just so story. They've gone a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away and then rattled off a story about the Big Bang. That's not a validation of a phenomena by way of systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis that assumed you knew the cause of the effect you witnessed and then varied something to cause it. That's just a story they made up, like I say, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, but this is why this all comes back to Einstein's E equals mc squared and the hydrogen fusion reactors, as they would state that what they're doing in a hydrogen fusion reactor is the same as what happens with the sun, as that is a star and all the stars. You know what I mean? This is as a kind of a broad strokes. They claim that they're all like hydrogen fusion reactors, more or less.
Yeah, it's a correlation, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, correlation is not causation. You can't say that the sun is caused by and then describe a chemical process or a reactionary process and say that is it because I can demonstrate a similar correlative process here on the ground. No, that's not validating your presumed cause of an effect by way of experiment based on you varying the thing you think caused it. Again, a just so story based on a correlation.
And it's also it's also a what is question based within a model.
Yeah, but you're actually correct when you say they're going to do a flat earth for that, because how they say stars actually come into existence or ever did or anything in their universe, the heliocentric universe, is to do with gravitational accretion, isn't it? Or something along those lines. So it's all based within the model. I might have that on a bit wrong, but
no, that's correct.
That's all based,
no, that's correct. Yeah. No, you're not wrong.
Yeah, it's all based within the model, and the model is based on us being on a globe, and the globe is based on elevation angles to Polaris. And how do we know the distance to the GP of Polaris from an observer? You need a right angle. Flat Earth.
Any evidence the R value? Earth radius?
You must be having a laugh at this stage, Oakley.
Didn't you just hear what Brian just said?
That would be a no. Well, there is evidence of the R value, but there's no evidence of a measurement of R.
That's the wrong answer. John, you there?
You're going to need a flat plane for that.
You see.
I'm learning. You think I should say that, wouldn't you? You think I just say that straight out. But I didn't want to repeat myself.
Well, I don't want to... I left it to the last point to labour it, actually, because of that. Well, in the past, as I'm sure I've bored you all to death with my story of interviewing Robin Poe out in Ferrari, Italy, and getting a 14-mile straight line shot without any curve of the Earth interfering with a transceiver back to source rather than via relays. But we never actually summarised the point at the end well enough for an audience to understand the implications thereafter. Well, any evidence of an R value? Well, it's there, it's in the maths, it's used daily to assert that you're on a sphere with a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon blocking things into the distance. It's definitely still there, it's part of the Western world religion, in fact it's the basis of it. But, in the last couple of weeks, we're now in a very unusual position that, unlike the Black Swan where you've got to kind of go around the Reekin explaining how their response to it in rebuttal saying refraction actually debunks their claim in the first instance, that requires explanation. This doesn't. You're going to need a flat plane for that. It's just a geometric matter of fact in terms of how you acquire an elevation angle. So, we've won. And I don't want that to ever not get laboured. It will get rumpused by Neil almost every time when I'm trying to concisely labour the point to the audience when nobody else has.
Sounds like you stopped. I just wanted to say, they're even telling us it's flat.
It must be. They have to correct it to be flat. If they try and weasel around a bastardised description of dip correction, which is height of eye correction above the flat plane that you must have to do this geometry, to use this trig, to do the function that you're actually trying to perform, you've got to have a flat plane beneath your feet. So if they try and bastardise dip correction into, no, it's actually correcting for the sphere Earth, you can focus on they're claiming you've got to do some correction because there's a sphere and Earth beneath our feet. Hold on, what are they actually saying? We've got to correct our misapprehension of a sphere being beneath our feet so that it's all flat. They need it, and it must be flat. And they're telling us how they correct it to be flat when they bastardise some vain, distant memory of their sphere that they used to beg the question of before doing anything. Now, they've got to relinquish it, and if they've still got hold of it, correct it flat.
Yeah, I'll give a less sarcastic rendition of it. The whole globe model is built on elevation angles to Polaris off a flat plane. You can't take an elevation to Polaris without a flat plane. You can't know the distance from Polaris without a flat plane because you need to know the observer's distance, straight line distance between the observer and the GP of Polaris, the geographical position of Polaris. So you need to have a co-attitude distance to then turn into nautical miles as a surface distance. And that means you need to use right angles. So if you're 45 degrees, if you have an angle to Polaris and it's 45 degrees, that means you're an exact straight line distance of 2,700 nautical miles from the GP of Polaris. So that requires a flat Earth. You can't do any of those things without a flat Earth. And all they did was they took all those angle measurements, they assumed that perspective wasn't real, and they pre-assumed the sky was curved, and then they took it to the center of a circle and said, what's actually happening is we're on a curved surface, and the angles from the center, they can mathematically make work as angles to match the distance along the surface of the sphere, while all angles to Polaris then will all be 90 degrees from the anything from anywhere above the north of the equator. So that's what they did. So when anyone asks a flat earther from here on in, any of the anti-flat earthers or ballers ask any flat earther from here on in, show me the flat earth model. You show them the 1972 blue marble, because that is the flat earth model.
You laugh, but that's the fact of the matter. When they drew out the flat plane and utilised the celestial sphere to measure angles, they derived the world that they described thereafter as spherical from a flat plane. That is just the facts of the matter here. So, cat's out of the bag. When they go back at engineering measurements taken from a flat plane, as they must be, they then describe those angles going into the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. That means they've got a flat plane at the middle of their sphere they believe they're on. So suddenly you're in the middle on a flat plane rather than on the outside edge. Now, if they're drawing out flat planes with the presupposition that doesn't require an elevation angle, they'll draw out a tangent plane to a presupposed tangent point that's been debunked. That's the Earth curve edge horizon. So they're still using a flat plane. Doesn't matter which way you look at it, because the ground beneath your feet is in fact flat. Whenever you actually utilise the world that you're standing on, you utilise it flat. And if you've got any fundamentalist religious presuppositions of it being spherical, you correct them flat.
I put a diagram in. Sorry, 1 second, Neil. I put a diagram in Master B that gives an explanation for it. It'll take a bit of looking at, but it explains it.
Okay, you've got it up.
That's what I was saying in the pre-show, that the globe Earth religion is built on a flat Earth model. That's what I was saying that for.
I had to. Neil, you're going to say something, I'll go after you. If you want to say something, I'll go after you. I'll explain this then.
No, I'm good. I'm waiting for you to describe this picture.
Okay, sorry. So here is Polaris, here is the flat plane, here is the angles that you require. You need a flat plane to take the elevation angles to Polaris, right? What they did is took the GP of Polaris, brought it down to the center of a circle. They put the flat plane here at the center of this circle. Then they determined from angles out from the center that to match the distances along the surface of Earth, that would match the distance along the surface of Earth. That they made these tangent planes, sort of things that don't exist. They made those, and they determined that Polaris was a huge, massive star that gave off parallel light, and that's why all angles will appear from the north of the equator on the globe will appear to go straight up, because everything is straight up to Polaris. That involves also the one-way speed of light being measured and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of other things, but it doesn't matter because the whole thing is destroyed by this. They can't take the angles to Polaris without a flat plane. So all the distances that they have, that they work out from the center of the globe, are all based on a flat plane. They're all based on right angle distances. So every one of them is just a back engineering from a flat Earth. So they back engineered a flat Earth and brought it to the center of the circle, and then made up a lot of other nonsense to go with it, basically.
That's amazing.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, this is a good diagram. I mean, it basically shows you what is working and how it's working. If you're actually acquiring measurements, everything below this line that I've highlighted with my mouse now is redundant. You don't need any of it. You just take an angle measurement. Now, if you happen to be above this line, i.e. this is the sea level, and you're on a boat that's slightly above it, then you'll make a correction so that you can bring it in line with the pure geometry of a right angle triangle. And wherever you are, your angle to, in this case, with Brian's example, Polaris, will decrease the further you go along this flat line. That's how the angle measurement will be taken, and must be taken, and is taken. Further to that, once you've got your angle off a flat plane as it must be taken, you can then presuppose that actually, no, that angle goes down to this point. And the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth is where the angle measurement will work to, with tangent planes sat on the edges. The only problem being that you're not measuring an angle from the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth in the core. This flat line that Brian has drawn to a minor degree at the centre of their presupposed spherical Earth could also extend out infinitely, and this line could just be considered, exactly as it is, the celestial sphere above you, with your measurements being measured to them, and it would work without any correction being done beyond your dip correction if you're using the horizon to establish a horizontal with a natural phenomenon. That would be the horizon. You don't necessarily have to do this dip correction I described in the first instance. For example, if you are using a tool like a bubble sextant, you've already established what your horizontal is. Therefore, no corrections required. You just draw out your triangle, measure your angle. Again, everything below this line being redundant. only utilised to describe what you will do with this angle once you've measured it on a flat plane, and you still want to retain your sphere belief. You have to put it to the centre of the presupposed spherical Earth and ignore the fact that that is not where you are measuring an angle from. Anyone else got anything to add while I've got the diagram up?
Yeah, Nathan, I'm putting 2 slides of Master B for citation.
Yeah, what I'd like to say is that what they did was they had to take a distance from the GP, from their observation point to the GP of Polaris, which meant they had to sail along the surface of the waters. So this is all based on angles taken from from mariners. So what they did is they had to sail south from Polaris and take those angles. So that means they had to correct for right angles. They had to correct for right angles. They had no choice. So a lot of our opposition don't understand that. They think, it can be, you don't need to use the surface. No, you do. If you're on a boat, you have no choice. You can't use the bubble section on a boat successfully. You have to use the horizon.
Okay,
and that's where they're...
Sorry, Brian. Carry on if you're not done.
I'm just saying that's where their elevation angles come from. That's where the surface measurement comes from. So it's all a geometric surface measurement that requires flat Earth.
Absolutely. Glad you rounded it out with the summary. Kudos. Okay, I've got your first slide up, 10th.
Yeah. Hey, that was a good segue, by the way, Brian, for this. War Department, I was able to purchase TM1205, and I've been looking for TM1206. Finally, it became available. So it's on order. But I want to take a page out of this. There's very good stuff here. This is from the War Department, March 4th, 1941. Next slide, please. Let's just read from the top. Therefore, if angles D and D are 40, the observer's distance from S is 40 times 60 nautical miles, obviously. So a total of 2,400 nautical miles. But C is the key point. In practice, the zenith distance, D or D, is not measured, but it's a complement. The altitude angle is measured. Zenith distance is determined by substituting the measured altitude in the equation. Zenith distance equals 90 degrees altitude. Figure 15 shows the relationship between altitude and zenith distance. If the altitude angle H in figure 15 is 50 degrees, the zenith distance is 90 degrees minus 50, or 40, which expressed in nautical miles is 2,400 nautical miles. Listen up here, folks. The explanation of why the sextant measures altitude instead of zenith distance lies in the fact that the early instrument makers quite logically designed their instruments to measure altitude because the instruments had to be leveled on the visible horizon, there being no definite point which marks the observer's zenith. For uniformity of practice, artificial horizon instruments were built to measure the same coordinate, though the gravity-operated mechanisms of these instruments indicate the vertical, the observer zenith, as well as the horizontal. Very interesting where they say it needs to be leveled at sea. Dip correction levels it for a right angle, and with the artificial horizon in the bubble section, you already have the horizontal, which gives you the vertical, the right angle.
Exactly. Dip corrects you for your right angle measurement. Not because you've got a fundamentalist religious presupposition that there's a sphere-edge horizon that's a second horizon that we can't see, that cannot be measured, that you've got the entire premise of your tangent plane teeter-tottering on top of. No, because that correction is simply a correction to make it flat based on your height above sea level. And if you think you're on a globe, fine, we'll say it's a correction for your fundy sphere belief so that it's flat. Either way, it's being corrected flat. Not required, as 10th Man just detailed, if you're using a bubble. That establishes your horizontal. Therefore, you don't need to correct anything. Earth's flat. Anybody got anything to add?
Only that, to reiterate that to do any of this and get any radius, because the globe Earth has a dual radii. It has a polar radius, which is 3950, and an equatorial radius of 3963, right? And an average radius of 3959, right? To get any of that, you need to know the elevation angle to Polaris as you move away from it. And to get any of that, you have to, the only way to gain an elevation angle is to use right angles, to use 90 degrees. That means you have to use a flat plane. Because all your distance measurements from the observer to the geographical position of Polaris have to be straight line distances, as there's no way around it. And they are measured with the baseline of your right triangle, which is always flat.
I think that's kind of what that screenshot was getting to. Mike over at 24/7 was explaining to me that they ignore the latitude. Well, this article said longitude and latitude specifically because it is a grid system and you are traveling a straight distance.
Yeah, you're traveling a straight distance from the GP of Polaris. That's how you get, like that. If you're 20 degrees, if Polaris is 20 degrees for you, let's say in the sky, it's not 20, sorry, not 20, but if it's 70 degrees off your horizon, that means you've traveled 20 by 60 nautical miles away from the GP of that. How do you know that? Because you're using a right angle. So when Al-Biruni and Eratosthenes before him had to both refer to the maths of Pythagoras for their supposed radius measurements, what were they referring to? Pythagoras' right angle. Because there is no other way for the globe model to have been created. There is no other way for the radius to have been created. That's the only way it was created. Elevation angles to Polaris. Right angle, Pythagoras.
So it's good not to downplay the monumental nature of this. So a couple of days ago, or yesterday, I forget which, I released an old show, and it was a specific show that I dug out to replay, although it hadn't been published on the channel it was published on. And that was of our discussions of the Ranty Flat Earth, Ruhif, Conspiracy Cats, a few others, claims in regards to the Blackpool Swan. Now, you might be wondering why this is a show that needs listening to again. Well, because it's a recent show, and we're arguing various different points about them needing R and needing tangent point horizon, physical sphere edges, not being able to get straight lines because of refraction. Those were our arguments, all perfectly valid. However, in a very short space of time, the discussion has taken a massive quantum leap forward in terms of how that particular claim would have been addressed should it, or were it to come up now. That is to say that we'd say, you're proving a flat plane with this claim. You're describing angles. And any angle that you describe ever is going to require a flat plane measurement. Because how it's done in this regard is utilization of trig. And you're going to need a right angle triangle, and the bottom baseline is going to be a flat earth to do that. And can't not be. So, you'll need a flat plane for all of these claims. Any that involve trig, including but not limited to the acquisition of the radius value of a sphere Earth. So, it's not to be downplayed. If you're new to the argument, it's a good time to get into this argument. Because you've got a silver bullet finally. I don't know. We've had good debunkings of a globe up until this point. We've had good assertions that the Earth is flat with demonstrable evidence. We haven't had exceptional evidence that the Earth is flat. And by exceptional, I mean both sides have to accept it without exception. So both sides must accept that when you're taking an elevation angle, you're going to be using a flat plane to do it. That's a fact. So it's not just a good argument, it's a great argument. It's not just a great argument, it's a devastating argument for the globe belief, because their need is the same as ours. They need a flat plane to make their elevation angles, to make their sphere Earth claim. So they're going to need a flat plane to make their sphere Earth claim. That's a big change in the argument position. It was right in front of our faces the whole time. Nothing's really changed. It was always there right in front of us. Adam.
I think I told them, I think you leveled the playing field because they're agreeing with us. They have to start flat. So happy days.
I posted something in the Master B if you want to share it, Nathan. Sorry, Adam.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Can hear you. Are you the floating
That's cool.
turd?
Yeah, no. I've had to come on through the work computer, so the camera's not working, so I had to pick a backdrop. But you look, there's a guy with a space sextant looking for his space plumb bob. That's why I kept...
So he is.
Yes, I'm just sat at work, so sorry, I'll have to keep moving.
You're just mucking around. Okay, right. Who wanted to present something?
No, I just have something that is very poignant, and it actually is I think it's the absolute end and killer of this argument. If you want to post it, I just posted it in Master B.
Outstanding.
Which one? I've got the
It's the blue marble, and there's something written on it.
flat Earth model.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's just a painting, though.
Yeah, but that's the point. It's just a model. It's a model that was built off of flat Earth. So when they're looking for the
I like the sentiment, but I like to nitpick.
Yeah, okay, but this is like the thing is that it's the truth. What you see there is a model based off of flat Earth. So when they're looking to see the flat Earth model, there it is. It's not reality. That is a model based off of flat Earth.
To make a model, yeah, and to have it described by their ethereal, all-encompassing terms that they like to use when they describe their model, right? Does everything. It's amazing. Well, then it's going to involve the Earth and the stars. That means making elevation angle measurements. That means that you're going to start with a flat plane. So all models that are going to be all-encompassing are going to be using a flat plane to make the claims. Now, unless they want to go forth and try, maybe that's why we have fourth-dimensional pseudo-force-based geometry. Maybe that's why we have it. Because in order to do anything that doesn't require a flat plane, well, next steps really is just invent your own geometry. And what do you know? Well, they have exactly that in the form of Einsteinian pseudo-Riemannian force-based geometry. That's an invention of their own doing. Just they need a new geometry, don't they? Why? Well, because as Brian's saying here, the geometry that this model, the globe model, was based on a flat plane. All the derivations started with a flat plane. Now, you can obviously take those flat plane measurements, rearrange them into your sphere belief, and then kid yourself that you're actually stood on a sphere. That's just reification. That hasn't changed either. But ultimately speaking, the model started flat and was measured flat, and then twisted into your fundy sphere belief that the rest of the Western world also stand behind.
So you mean to tell me that this blue marble started flat? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, the whole premise for it. Sorry.
That's why the argument is always inflated. Nathan, I got 2 slides in Master B on this point. If you can go.
Can't take the blue marble as the model. I will get to you in a second, I promise, but just want to round this out. It's an image that's come from a religious reification of a sphere Earth model to turn this, which we see here, into the belief that we have a violation of natural law sky vacuum with capabilities of image acquisition, and this is that image. But the reason the image exists is because we have the Western world under the misapprehension that the taking of a flat plane to measure elevation angles and then bending them into a radius-based sphere is actually caused to believe they have a sphere beneath their feet. Therefore, you end up with this image. It's a representation of the model as opposed to the model.
A consequence of a belief in that model that was created off of flat Earth.
Yeah,
But
there you
this
go.
is the best Yeah. This is the best representation they've given people as a reality of that model, which is this claimed 1972 claimed photograph taken from the Apollo missions. So this is the thing. It's like this thing they're showing you that they're claiming is the physical Earth is not. It's a painting based off of a mathematical model that's based off of flat Earth measurements.
If you want to see it, in a more three-dimensional way, we'd already claimed it anyway after the fact, which is Google Earth. Well, Google Earth, if you draw out an elevation profile, when we're talking about taking elevation angles, well, all of the elevation profiles in Google show Earth flat. That's the measurements of Earth are flat in Google Earth, and must be. That's why you've got a square, flat-based box when you do an elevation profile. And you can draw out your line for thousands of miles and show there's no drop anywhere. There's no Earth curve. There isn't any. It would be measured. It would be documented exactly as claimed. It isn't. So what do we have left? Well, we've got Google Earth being a flat Earth model because the elevation profile proves it. It shows it and demonstrates it and shows it and claims it as measured flat. That's what it's showing and measuring. And it's being utilised daily by professionals to build stuff off. So, based on the fact that it shows it flat, measures it flat, gives you a flat elevation profile, and any elevation angle that's measured ever would demonstrate and require the geometry of a flat line, we can fundamentally say without doubt that Earth is flat. That's how it's been measured. So you want to see them take that and convince you that you're on a sphere? Yeah, just zoom out and ignore all actual measurements presented to you in Google Earth. And you'll see it as a ball shape. Amazing, isn't it? However, despite the fact that you might have zoomed out and seen a ball shape, if you draw a massive line across the entire diameter of whatever it is you can see, it will show a flat elevation profile for that entire area. Because it is, in fact, flat for that entire area, as measured and demonstrated and sold to the public and built upon as flat, as a result of it being flat. Earth is, in fact, flat. 10th, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah. First, I want to shout out to Adam for showing images from a supposed ISS without wires. You do much better than NASA there, Adam. All right, so the first one here is the picture they always show. It shows the sun parallel to actual horizon, and then the height of eye. Do we have that one up? Yeah, there we go, Nathan. So this is the trick right here. Everything below that dotted line that's horizontal is made up. Now, here's how it works. You're on the surface of the Earth, and you're holding a sextant, and you need a right angle, but you're on a boat, say 14 feet above sea level. So you do height of eye, dip correction, which brings you down to the dotted line. Now you're parallel to a true horizon at your eye line. So when they say, well, the whole purpose of a sextant is to get a horizontal, well, how are you going to get it? You have to establish a plumb bob, a vertical at sea. Good luck. So what happens is they shoot the horizon. They say, how far above the sea level am I? 14 feet. Let's minus that from the other corrections we have to do. And then we're going to have a true right angle, which gives us our horizontal and vertical all at the same time. Now, what's below that dotted line? Do you see that solid line that's on an angle over that circle? It's called horizon. That's supposed to be their geometric horizon. Well, we've never seen it before. It's all fictitious. No one's ever seen Earth curve. Actual horizon dotted line. If height of eye is 0 minutes, 0 seconds. That's the way it's being done. Then they draw the circle with something that doesn't exist, a geometric horizon that you never see. And then they say, oh, by the way, we got everything from the center of the Earth. Go to the next slide, please. And this is how a sextant works, a right angle. Does that look like that could work from a surface with a curved adjacent? Impossible. That's why it's the age of the sextant.
Perfect. Good presentation. It is simple stuff. None of it requires the fundamentalist religious presuppositions of a sphere Earth, and if you have them, they're going to be corrected to be flat.
It's that the indoctrination is so deep. That's what it is.
Well, can I let the cat out of the bag, 10th? It's nothing, too crazy.
Yeah, which cat is it? The fifth one or the first one?
No, just that I'm planning on what we're planning. He actually called me up and I was like, yeah, word, why didn't I think of this when I thought to myself about it? And so I'm going to be interviewing him so that ultimately it'll probably be like a presentation, but more in interview form. So people know how he came across this information and where it led to and how we're here now. So be on the lookout for that interview.
Wait,
have to
your
give us
interview intent?
more information. You need to fill us in more than that.
I'll share. Eli and I have been talking behind the scenes, and he's asking a lot of good questions. So I said, well, why don't you just interview me and ask all the questions directly? He said, okay. So he's going to do something like that.
Oh, cool. Can't wait.
Excellent.
Yeah, couldn't think
And
of
I
a better
just wanted-
person to be asking the questions either, Eli. You do have a lot of good questions to ask, and you're right on top of it in terms of the arguments in general. Not much gets past you.
Yeah, both Eli. Eli is a very good speaker. I've said this to him at the weekend. He's a very good speaker, very calm, and he gets his point across in a way that everyone can understand. I can't do it like Eli can do it. Eli can get his point across a lot better and more clear than me to all audiences. And I just want to say that 10th Man, basically, besides all the years of stuff that happened that brought us up to this point, 10th Man basically has given us the tools to show the world that it is not a globe. That the globe is only a mathematical model that's based on flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. So, shout out to 10th Man.
Hey, thank you, Brian. And I will say I got all the tools from the Globers and the Sexton books by them. So all the tools are from their own resources.
Yeah, but you brought them. You
No,
got
I
past the
agree.
barrier that they couldn't
Would
get
you
past.
take the glory?
Okay, right. Before these three get into an argument about how much ass kissing there should be done on this live show, I would like to get a straw poll done from the audience themselves and find out if you actually understand this stuff. If you're going around and declaring the fact that it's flat based on elevation angles, requiring it to be so, or if the argument's unclear, I'd like to, if you're watching this after the fact and you're not in the chat, leave me a comment. Just say, yeah, no, I get it. Earth must be flat. We can't have any of these angle measurements to any of these celestial bodies to make assertions of our measurements, or whatever it is that's sunk in this regard that lets me know you know in the audience. Because I don't want to downplay this. I want affirmation that people are getting it.
Yeah.
Nathan, let me comment on what Brian said. I'm not doing it. Well, let me put it this way. I didn't answer the way I did for what people were laughing at. I did it because the ballers and the anti-flat earthers are saying we're making stuff up. And I just want the audience to know every bit of information I've cited, book cover, what they said. And there was not one, let me just try it. Flat Earth Sextant book. Nothing comes up. So all I've been given was their books and the way they explained it. So I had to go through each page, try to figure out what they're doing. And so that's what came off the pages to me. Then I started doing the presentations, knowing that if I just put it out there, people who have greater debating skills than me, people who are smarter than me, people who know math better than me, like Adam, is going to progress the argument forward. And look where we're at. Look where we're at, how tight the argument is now. One guy can't do this. It takes all of us just looking at information and saying, well, I could say that much clearer. And that's where we are with the Sexton argument. It's much clearer. It's much quicker. It's over for them.
Nah, you're the man, Tent.
Yeah, I'd be too humble altogether. Smart people who are smart. Who's smarter than you? I mean, what does that mean? Well,
here's
smarter in their own way.
Well, I'll tell you who's smarter than me. When someone said cosine, I thought that meant a loan, but I didn't know it meant something in math.
Yeah, well, look, it's like this. It's like, even though I pushed the airplane argument, because I love it as a simple argument for the average everyday person, that is only going to be a sidebar, because the globe wasn't built on air travel. The globe model was built mathematically off of celestial navigation and elevation angles using celestial navigation techniques to Polaris. So the globe model is built off a flat Earth, and that comes back to the use of celestial navigation.
Yeah, I never thought we'd get really down to brass tacks of how we'd been deceived and what actually took place in terms of the maths. But now, 2022, you go, yeah, I really do think I've got a good idea how we've been swindled and what they did mathematically and what they used to get there. You say, oh, yeah, well, we've boiled it down to, angle measurements to Polaris, utilising that to turn it into a sphere and give you your radius. Well, you go, oh, what else you got? Well, the guy came on the other day, Flat Earth Data, told us all about how he got the Earth curve measurements, but without any reference to Earth curve, just being used, well, to establish a horizontal plane in navigation. Just dealing with the artifacts and getting a better handle on how the horizon's going to present it to yourself on any given day when you're going to be needing to correct for it, to give yourself a nice base for your geometry when you're doing a right angle triangle. You go, okay, so this is where the swindle came in then. Because it wasn't being called Earth curve, but the measurements all match. So we can see the timeline. The maths was already laid out. People were already good at that. People had a good mathematical understanding of the world, and the horizon was one of the things that they'd looked at, and they knew what was going to happen with it. And people took that and went, we can turn that into Earth curve. Let's do it. Let's just call it Earth. Just change the label on this title on this. Easy. Done. Now it's no longer refraction of the horizon for dip corrections. Now it's Earth curve. Done. Job's a good one. Maths doesn't have to change a bit.
The clues are all there when you do the research, because they'll come on. These are the people who've been using the system for 30, 40, 50 years, navigating successfully with it. They'll say, yeah, when we have to do it, we have to imagine the Earth is flat and motionless. I said, wait a minute, I've heard that before somewhere. Didn't NASA and Martin Marietta and McDonnell Douglas say for their instrumentation to work on the aviation and those types of things, instruments, that the Earth has to be flat and motionless too? Why do they keep saying that if you live on a sphere that's spinning and going through all these gyrations through space, that the only way these things work is to imagine it's not?
Because it isn't. Because Earth is actually flat. If you've got to deal with life and death scenarios, like high-speed manoeuvres over the plane, you're going to want to know how it actually presents itself, aren't you? If you're going to want to remain in the air because of lift, you're going to want to know what you're going to need to achieve that. And if the ground's falling away from you at a rapid rate, I think you'd want to know if you're flying an aeroplane. Now, do they? No. No, they're told not to consider it falling away from them, because that might cause them problems. Expecting it to fall away at 8 inches per mile squared, diving towards it and finding that you find a flat plane meets you, that the ground hasn't fallen away from your position, as it would on a sphere. Yeah, best to consider it's flat and definitely in the way, rather than falling away from you and, an empty void being left behind where there's actually ground to smash into. Yeah, just consider it flat and then you won't crash into it.
Well, how they make it okay inside their own heads, how they make it okay with themselves, is they state that they're following an altitude. When they use the word just, we're just following an altitude. Now, to follow an altitude around a spherical surface means to follow basically a parallel to that spherical surface. But then they'll state that they're using local horizontals. I mean, horizontal is a constant. It's not a local thing that turns into some other local thing somewhere else. It's a constant position. It's a constant thing. It's like once you dip below horizontal, which you'd have to do to go around a spherical surface, then there is no way around that. You can't hold horizontal and have to dip below horizontal. So it's like we just follow an altitude. We just hold an altitude. It's like that kind of makes it go away inside their own head. But that doesn't, you're just holding an altitude. Well, if that's an altitude is what? An equidistant distance from the surface of the Earth. If that's on a globe, then you have no choice but to violate the horizontal. You have to. You have to follow that altitude around the spherical surface that it's claimed to be going around. Can't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
this is
ballers are
known
prone to
as
do that.
Go on, citation, please. Sorry, 10th.
So in order to maintain an altitude in a curved flight class, you must constantly change your attitude. That's a necessary factor that must occur. And that's the thing, is the attitude.
Yeah, it's an accumulation that builds from your first second of cruising altitude, basically. It's an accumulation. Once you're up in the air and you're at cruising altitude, it's an accumulation per second from there. So you can't, once you're at cruising altitude, to fly any airplane around a globe out, you could not ever fly at any time with your nose above horizontal to follow the curvature and the altitude. The altitude follows the curvature, which means you've got to follow the altitude, which means you've got to be constantly, from the very word go, starting off with a below horizontal pitch. Do they do that? No, they have to be pitched above horizontal to fly horizontally.
Well, can anybody give the ballers a lift? I think Brian can.
Yeah, I'm not popular with them with the whole airplane stuff and all that. I get a lot of hassle off them and some of the pilots and all that. But it's like, it's not my fault. It is what it is. You know, the reality is reality.
Yeah, that's plain to see right now.
The ball is destroyed.
Yeah, that's why Wolfie seems to have an attitude when it comes to the plane's attitude.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better.
I think he was trying to lay in a pun, actually.
Yeah, I know. It was very good.
Please, someone else say something. I don't want that terrible pun to
Well,
be
that. I mean, he's a pilot, a corporate pilot, so he's buying all the jargon because there are people who actually believe this stuff and think that's how it works. Then there's those that know, and the ones that know don't want to debate because they're going to lose every single debate. So who do we have coming?
Like
what's that?
Like the Austrian female pilot who released a statement that she noticed in her whole career that the gyro that she used never flipped over. She's like, wait a minute. If I'm flying around a curve and this plane is changing attitude, this gyro should be flipped backwards, but it isn't. And she said, wow, I've been lied to.
Well, she's honest with herself.
With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, smashed the PayPal link, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!